You're with Africa 54. Good evening. I'm Haiti Adams-Fitzpatrick. Thank you so very much for joining us. Rwanda has launched an inquiry into the possible role of 20 military and other officials from France in the 1994 genocide. Rwanda has long accused France of supporting the government of former President Juvenal Habyarimana, a Hutu, whose death sparked a bloodbath in that country. In 2006, the Rwandan government temporarily broke its ties with France when a French judge called for Rwanda's President Paul Kagame to be tried over Habyarimana's death. Kagame denies any role and accuses France of training soldiers who led the massacre. Well, new details are surfacing today about the Somali immigrant who attacked fellow students at Ohio State University on Monday. Abdul Razak Ali Artan rammed his car into a group of people, then jumped out of his vehicle and attacked others with a knife. He had spoken to campus newspapers previously, saying he had been afraid for his own safety as a Muslim in the current American political climate, fearing he would be attacked if he were to pray in public. Now, we have a very special guest here with us this evening, Sahra Abdi Ahmed. She has just returned from Columbus, Ohio, and she was there on the campus when the attack happened. She joins us now to tell us more. Sahra, do just that for us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Heidi.
Tell us what exactly happened, what was going through your mind, and how you felt in that moment when you knew there was an attacker on campus.
Actually, I wasn't in the campus, but I was in the, city in Columbus, Ohio, visiting friends and families there. And as everybody in the state and the city, I felt like, what is happening? Because everybody was like, hey, there has been, shooting, there has been shooting going on in the campus for the Ohio State University, and everybody have been alerted that anything could happen. And the Somali people that I have been with that day, it was Monday, were all alerted and saying we have to know what's going on, because some of them have children or kids that were going to the university. So everybody said in it that things had happened in the university's campus.
Well, this must have been terrifying for many people in the Somali community as well, who fear that there might be a backlash. And I mean, we're notwithstanding the terror that was felt by those people on campus. But what are the people in the Somali immigrant community in Columbus, Ohio, feeling right now?
As the matter of the fact is that the Somali people there, they felt, whenever they had the incident that the Somali young boy was involved, the issue, they felt, fear. They were highly, saying what's going on and how things had happened, and then they were asking each other how this had happened. And most of them, they were afraid of it could be a backlash to them, because there has been incidents that had happened like this one over 2 months ago in mall that was in Minneapolis, the fairest, most populated state in the Somalis in America. And then they were thinking that this might be, a kind of that one. And there has been 9 other Somali boys that had sentenced for just weeks ago. So they were all concerned how things is going to be and what's happening. Exactly, they were, communicating together, very concerned, very fearful, especially for the mothers and the fathers who are in the state of Ohio, especially Columbus, Ohio. And they were, there has been a press conference that has been held, the community and the Islamic leaders in Columbus, Ohio, saying this has nothing to do with the Islamic religion. This has nothing to do with the Somali community there. It's some incident or an action that somebody has done, and it should be to that person only.
Sahra, thank you very much. Sahra Abdi Ahmed, she has just returned from Columbus, Ohio. She was there when Abdul Razak Ali Artan rammed his car into a group of people on the campus there. Sahra, thank you very much for your insights and speaking to us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Gambians will go to the polls Thursday to elect a new president amid a climate of dissent. Incumbent President Yahya Jammeh, who has ruled the country for 22 years, says he wants to stay on. He's seeking a fifth term in office, but is facing stronger opposition than ever before. Civil uprisings in April and May this year revealed really the extent of discontent with Jammeh's rule. 8 opposition parties are backing businessman Adama Barrow. Activists and diplomats say Barrow's campaign has been marred by human rights abuses and torture, claims the president's supporters deny. Now, President Jammeh has warned there'll be zero tolerance for any election violence or unrest. European observers have been barred from the country, but the African Union will be allowed to observe the election. Now, it's been almost 3 years since the Ebola epidemic broke out in West Africa. It killed more than 11,000 people and really laid bare the weaknesses of the public's health system, the region's public health systems. No new Ebola cases have been reported since March, but the 3 most affected countries remain on alert. VOA traveled along the path of the outbreak to find out what has changed and how the region might cope if Ebola broke out there again. Ricky Shryock has this report from southeastern Guinea, where the epidemic first began.
We're deep in Guinea's Jeke forest.
When someone is bit by a snake, this is what we treat them with, and it quickly goes away. The forest is a pharmacy.
People pay healers what they can. Many here can't afford clinics and prescription medicine.
We came here because my father here is sick. It's cheaper than hospitals. They haven't even asked us for any money yet. They treat him first.
There are only 30 medical doctors in this part of rural Guinea, but there are more than 6,000 traditional healers.
We are the intermediaries between the modern doctors and the sick. We treat those we can, and we send those we cannot to the hospitals.
It was here in the forests of southeastern Guinea that the regional Ebola epidemic began in late 2013. Traditional healers found themselves on the front lines, facing a deadly foe they had never seen before. Many healers contracted Ebola while treating patients. Ebola looked like other common illnesses at first, and they didn't know how it was transmitted, via bodily fluids. If Ebola reemerges, experts say the first cases would likely land on a healer's doorstep. What happens next may be critical. The World Health Organization and other partners have trained hundreds of traditional healers in Guinea on infection protection and control.
It's about cleanliness. We need to wash our hands. We need to use chlorine. All this for cleanliness and to help people who need us.
But Niami has run out of the gloves and other protective equipment he got as part of his training in April. He said his requests for more have gone unanswered. Regional health officials said they aren't aware of shortages.
They're always served by me. But if I'm not asked and not informed, if they say they asked their focal point, that person doesn't manage the chlorine. It is the logistics unit and they pass by me.
Bureaucracy aside, Niami says the epidemic taught the healers they can't cure everything, that some cases have to be referred to clinics. But Niami adds one thing hasn't changed. His door will always be open to patients in need. Ricky Shryock for VOA News in Zaragoza, Guinea.
Moving to Latin America now, Fidel Castro's ashes will begin a 3-day journey across Cuba Wednesday. The procession will retrace in reverse the route Castro and his rebel fighters took as they advanced on Havana before taking power in January 1959. The procession will end in Santiago de Cuba on Saturday, where a mass rally will be held. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered in Havana's Revolutionary Square Tuesday to honor Castro. Among world leaders paying their respects in Havana this week are Cuba's Latin American allies and African presidents Jacob Zuma from South Africa and Robert Mugabe from Zimbabwe. Meanwhile, Fidel Castro's death raises questions here about the future of Cuba's economy and its relationship with the rest of the world. Many wonder if the government in Havana will really move towards a market economy now that Cuba's revolutionary leader has died. Marcus Harton has more on this story.
During his life, Fidel Castro blamed the United States economic embargo for his country's economic woes. Some, including French President François Hollande, used Castro's death as an opportunity to call for the embargo to end.
Je veux, à l'occasion de la disparition de Fidel Castro,
I want, on the occasion of the death of Fidel Castro, to again insist that the embargo that punishes Cuba should be lifted definitively.
levé, définitivement levé, et qu'il puisse y avoir une ouverture.
Cuba should be fully regarded as a partner in the international community.
Cuba puisse être pleinement dans la communauté internationale.
The embargo remains in effect, even though some of its restrictions were loosened by a recent thaw in U.S.-Cuba relations. Despite the thaw, U.S. companies who want to do business in Cuba say bureaucratic hurdles have slowed their plans.
Fidel was the intellectual and leader of the revolution.
U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, a Cuban-American, says Castro's death brings Cubans a step closer to freedom, but he believes doing business in Cuba may remain business as usual.
You want to do business in Cuba? You want to be part of the hotel industry or the tourism industry? You got to go see Raul's son. You want to go ahead and do agriculture business in Cuba? You got to do it with his son-in-law, both high-ranking officials of the Cuban military.
Another factor complicating trade ties with Cuba is President-elect Donald Trump. At a September campaign event, Trump criticized President Obama's moves toward normalizing relations with Cuba and threatened to reverse them.
But all of the concessions that Barack Obama has granted the Castro regime were done through executive order, which means the next president can reverse them, and that I will do unless the Castro regime meets our demands. Those demands will include religious and political freedom for the Cuban people and the freeing of political prisoners.
Trump's incoming White House chief of staff, Reince Priebus, echoed that sentiment on Sunday, saying the U.S. will need to see some movement from Cuba in order to have a relationship with the United States. Marcus Harton, VOA News, Washington.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover here. You can join the conversation on Facebook. The address there is Africa 54. Do check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, how Kenyan farmers boost income with drought-tolerant grass. Stay with us.
This is Greenbeat for a healthier planet.
In the heart of the Amazon rainforest, rising high above the green canopy, is the Amazonian Tall Tower Observatory, or ATO for short. The tower is designed to measure the complex exchange of gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, and ozone between the ground and the sky. Project Director Antonio Monzi says the tower's soaring height will also allow researchers to study the formation of clouds and rain.
The temperature of the planet that has been increasing and has increased here changes in the rainy seasons here. All those changes have an impact on the ecosystems.
The tower is a joint project between Brazil and Germany, with both nations sharing in the estimated $10 million price tag. The ATO should become fully operational sometime in 2017. For Greenbeat, I'm Doug Bernard.
Welcome back to Africa 54. We're going to take a look at our business news now. And fintech has rapidly been adopted across the continent, but there is still a tremendous amount of growth potential in Africa. With more details on this technology and where the opportunities still exist is Jill Malandrino, our business correspondent in New York. Jill, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about this.
First, let's explore what fintech actually is, because it's a mainstream term that's thrown around a lot in the world of business reporting. Fintech is an economic industry composed of companies that use the technology to make services more efficient. So, according to Wharton Fintech, there are three major things in finance that fintech does. The first, it lowers traditional rates and charges incurred on transaction. It simplifies payment processes, removing the friction involved. And the third, it provides needed information to aid users to make informed decisions.
But, Jill, doesn't the low level of banking and financial infrastructure leave a lot to be desired in finance, though?
That's exactly why fintech is all the more important in Africa. Let's take a look at Nigeria, the largest economy, for example. The transfer and purchasing sections of fintech are growing with startup companies like QuickTeller, Pega, Paystack, SimplePay, and VoguePay. And while tracking spending and lending are making headway, tech companies have not gotten in the mindset of the average Nigerian, so the potential still exists. And this type of situation exists when any major technology shift takes place, regardless if it's a developed country or not. Unlike other more developed countries where the financial structure is solid, Nigerian fintech can complement gaps that poor banking structure leaves.
Jill, can you give us an example of where fintech really is disrupting traditional banking?
Safaricom, probably one of the most well-known African companies, announced earning results this week that surpassed expectations by 38%. In fact, the market cap of the company is bigger than the economies of Burundi, Lesotho, and Swaziland. But here's the most impressive stat. M-Pesa, the money transfer service of Safaricom, represents 20% of total revenue. The company is also seeking to diversify the platform with services such as M-Shwari in collaboration with the Commercial Bank of Africa. Now, according to the Central Bank of Kenya, mobile money contributes nearly 67% of the national payment systems. That's a staggering amount and clearly shows there's plenty of potential for more fintech growth.
Wow, that's interesting. Jill Malandrino, Africa 54's business correspondent, speaking to us from New York. Thank you so very much for joining us. Staying on the continent and speaking of Africa's potential, Kenya is expanding the cultivation of a new type of forage grass that could boost milk production and increase the incomes of families. The grass is nutritious and drought-resistant, and it's already being used in several other countries in East Africa. VO's Leni Ruvaga reports from Sia, Kenya.
The Oremos begin their daily routine by cutting grass for their prized cow. Both husband and wife, subsistence farmers in Siaya, about 400 kilometers from Kenya's capital, Nairobi, turned to dairy farming 2 years ago to supplement their income. In the past, their milk production was around 3 liters. On average, they earned $100 a month, barely enough for their basic needs before changing to the new fodder. However, since adopting a new variety of grass known as brachiaria, they noticed a drastic change in milk production and their income, which increased to $200.
This grass is better because it makes us get a lot of milk from our dairy cow. Before we use it, we were getting only 3 liters. But after we started using it, we switched to 10 liters per day, 12 liters per day.
About 1,000 farmers in the area are registered at the Samalanga Dairy Cooperative, which processes the milk on their behalf. Jacob Ojal, an official at the co-op, says the plant has seen an increase in milk production. Ojal says that during the dry season, farmers who haven't adopted the new grass suffer losses.
Not all farmers have adopted the Bulgaria species. Because of the maybe shortage of the seeds around, and also the price of the seeds, how to get them. But the few farmers who have, so you find that during the dry spells, the farmers who have not adopted that one, they get it hard to, they have a problem in feeding their animals.
Plant breeders at the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, CIAT, in collaboration with the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, began research on this particular brachiaria grass 5 years ago. Dr. Anne Nuttenbert, one of the scientists on the project, says the new variety of grass is improving livelihoods of farmers.
We believe we have a good solution for African farmers in terms of providing feed for their animals that will increase their productivity, and that is also suitable to some of the more difficult areas in terms of drought. And at the same time, it will also reduce climate change, greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a real win-win for the farmers and the wider community.
Around 4,000 farmers in Kenya have adopted the new grass. Lenny Ruvaga for VOA News, Siaya, Kenya.
Supercharged plants could someday help feed a hungry planet. Scientists have found a way to dramatically boost plant growth by modifying how they respond to changes in light and shade. VOA's Steve Baragona reports.
Plants turn sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water into food. It's a process called photosynthesis. Plant biologist Steve Long studies it at the University of Illinois.
Arguably, photosynthesis is the most important process on our planet. It is the driving force behind all of life.
The process is not very efficient in some of our most important crop plants. And that's a luxury we cannot afford, says Matthew Reynolds at the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, known as CIMMYT. He spoke to VOA via Skype.
Population is growing so fast, climate change is affecting negatively predictions of productivity. And so we kind of forced to push our crops to the limit.
Here's how Long's group pushed crops. Plants have a system that protects them from too much sun, but when clouds or leaves shade them, that system stays on for minutes or hours, slowing down the plant's growth. Long and his colleagues added genes that shortened the recovery time. Modified plants grew up to 20% more than untreated ones.
This finding, where we've just made one modification that has boosted crop yield, is really a boost to the whole area, because everyone else working on photosynthesis can now see if we can improve photosynthetic efficiency in crops, we will get more yield.
Long's group used genetic engineering, or transgenics, which can be controversial. But Reynolds, who focuses on conventional plant breeding, says it's a start.
A transgenic event can prove a proof of concept, so we can start looking for natural variation as well.
Reynolds says the yield gains Long's colleagues achieved are impressive, and he's cautiously optimistic. But he wonders,
what is the downside? Why have the plants not done that before? And we always ask those questions when we see something that looks a bit too good to be true.
Long's group worked in tobacco because it's easy to study. Next, they plan to apply the same techniques to rice, soybeans, and cassava, 3 critical food supplies around the world. Steve Baragona, VOA News.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come here on Africa 54, Russia's surprising red-hot dining trend. You're going to want to see this. We'll be right back.
Hamilton Live is a live audience performance. With live music, you have that interaction. There's nothing like getting that immediate feedback from the folks that you're performing to. They feel it and they respond back to you. You see it in their eyes. You know that you're connecting with them. Like if any form of communication, it's that response that you get back.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Let's take a look at what is trending. Not everyone is willing to stand in line for bargain-priced items on Black Friday. Online shoppers spent more than $3 billion on Cyber Monday. They splurged on Samsung 4K TVs, PlayStation 4s, and Barbie dolls, among other products, making this the largest online sales day in U.S. history. The impressive numbers also underscore the broader shift to online shopping, which is making up for slower spending inside stores. Other big sellers were Apple iPhones and Amazon Fire tablets. Wasn't me. And finally, Moscow's latest food craze appears to have scurried straight from the riverbed onto diners' plates. A burger made of, wait for it, rodent meat has become the latest must-have dish after a restaurant specializing in southern Russian food put the nutria or river rat on its menu. A chef at the Krasnodar Bistro restaurant says the nutria burger was simple, tasty and full of course, nutrients. The burger sells for just over $8. And that is, of course, what is trending this Monday. Well, we bring you a story of a young Ugandan woman who is making a name for herself in New York City. Africa 54's Jeanette Mugisha has our story.
Yeah. I kept pushing for it. I said, I really want to get into film. I was still passionate about it. I was still driven to go and pursue it.
Take one.
Lucy Bunyenyezi traded the natural comforts of her East Africa home for the hustle and bustle of New York City to chase her acting dream. Her upbringing and education inspired her to follow her passion in search of life on the big screen.
My name is Lucy Bunyenyezi. I'm 23 years old. I'm a Ugandan, and I'm an aspiring actress living in New York City.
She moved to New York in 2015, but the move was not smooth sailing. Lucy had to convince her mother that acting could be a career and not just a simple pastime. For most Ugandans back then, it was more prestigious to study medicine, law, or something of stature, but Lucy's career dream was nowhere near that level.
I think it started in school, is where my passion sort of grew from it. I went to boarding school at 7 years old in St. Andrew's Turi, which is in Kenya.
St. Andrew's Turi also encouraged her to opt more acting roles, where she frequently appeared in school plays while also attending the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts program. And that was the beginning of her acting journey. However, luck was on her side when she auditioned and got a supporting role in the Ugandan TV show Beneath the Lights. With the role also guaranteeing a paycheck, Lucy went home that night determined to convince her mom she was taking this chance and she would not be following up on job interviews. To her surprise, her mother simply said, okay, and before she knew it, she was vouching for Lucy to train and hone her skills on set.
One must ask themselves, if I was invited, would I wear this dress to the Academy Awards?
That led Lucy to apply to the New York Film Academy for a summer training program. She met Broadway star and Lucy's mentor, Blanche Baker, and it wasn't long till she noticed Lucy's hidden talent.
Lucy was one of the best actresses I've ever taught at the student level, and first she was in our 8-week program at the New York Film Academy, and then she joined the degree program, and she has really continued to grow and excel.
After spending over a year coaching and refining her, Blanche believes that Lucy's decision to come to the Film Academy was a positive move for her career.
It's just that you get so mad.
It was really the step up for her to attend the school and grow as an actress.
Her 8-week program was enough to convince Lucy to return for a full-year acting program where she was also awarded a scholarship. The extended program gave her the opportunity to see both sides of the camera. Armed with experience as an actress and as a producer, Lucy is hoping to share her knowledge to enhance the film industry back in her native home of Uganda.
I'd love to be trying to shape things a little bit, impact my film industry, and hopefully shape, perhaps a generation's viewpoint of this industry not being something credible.
She also has some words of encouragement for young aspiring actresses and actors pursuing their dream.
Consistently fight the stereotype, the stigma of sorts, that this field is a mockery, that this field is not good enough.
Jeanette Mugisha, VOA News, New York.
What a positive note to end on. That is our show for today. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching. Good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words.
Does this word mean something good has happened?
Unleashed.
The president is sending Secretary of State John Kerry to the Middle East to help build a coalition to defeat the militants who have unleashed a wave of violence that has included attacks on Iraq's Christians and other minority communities, and recently the videotaped killing of American journalist James Foley.
Unleashed means to let something very powerful happen quickly.
It is like taking a leash off a dog and letting it attack someone. In our story, the militants unleashed or set off a wave of violence.
Usually, unleashed does not mean something good.
So, the next time you hear the word unleashed, you will know what this news word means.